Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and we got Rita from the Gridiron Gals podcast. She's a co-host over there and a co-host with the one and only Glenn Clark at Project Game Day. So we're really excited to have you on the show, Rita. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing?
Thank you guys. I told you guys before we came on that, I've had better days, which is why you guys don't see me. I do exist. I have pictures, but I don't want you guys, your followers, to make jokes about my current state. So I just felt like it was better to just be mystique and be mysterious today. So that's why you guys can't see me, for those asking.
Okay. Oh, well, we're rolling with it. Don't worry. Don't you worry at all.
That's it. That's all. We came for what you had to say first and foremost.
Right.
So yeah, we'll stick to that. All right. So the big hubbub, you broke the story first. You didn't quite go into the naming your guy, but you mentioned that there would be a visit coming to Baltimore that would make the flock happy. So I have to ask you about that. Have you heard anything about how the Justin Houston visit went in Baltimore?
I'm actually going to follow up on that and see how it went. Too many times people ask you for your sources. And although I haven't been in journalism in a while, I used to have a blog. And then, now I just kind of do the podcast for fun and the Project Game Day. But it's not the same as like journalism. You don't give up your sources. That's just, that's the number one thing. So I can't tell you where I got it from. Just, you're either going to believe me or you don't. And my track record says, hey, she's so far been pretty consistent on,
right.
Things that she broke. Cause I mentioned the Marlon Humphrey extension last year. And I explained the Juju Smith-Schuster non-signing for the Ravens. And so, I just wanted to, my biggest mistake, which I regret, right, is that I always say the streets. That's the term that I use in terms of my sources, right? The streets told me this before a date was set, and I went and said something, and then I didn't have a date. So people were in my mentions for days. Then somebody, like 3 people added me to like a Ravens chat in my DMs, and they were harassing me in my DMs. And I had to turn off my DMs. So now that I think about it, I need to turn them back on, right?
Yeah, because that's why I added you.
I mean, it was just like, guys, literally when I tweeted the, Houston on Tuesday with the eyes, I muted the tweet. So I didn't know until like later when I looked back at the tweet that like people like Jamison Hensley and Jeff Zreback had like retweeted me and, giving me some credit. But it was just so crazy. My biggest regret is just not waiting until I got a date. So then I could have put it out then, because it was literally a whole week. Easter was that week when I first brought it up. Because that's when the streets told me, right? And so I didn't think it would be as long as it was, which is why I think I kind of put it out there. But I completely forgot about the Easter holiday being, Good Friday and then Easter Sunday. So I can now, looking back, right, hindsight, I see why it was delayed. It just didn't dawn on me. And I didn't think like a whole week was going to go by. And then as the days went by, I was like, I called my streets and I was like, you sure, right? This is about like, yeah, because like I ain't going out here looking bad, am I? And then I got the date, and then it kind of it solidified itself. But yeah, like I told everybody, I said, man, I'm retiring from like whatever news that I get, man. I'm just gonna keep the news to myself because I didn't even get that kind of fanfare with the Marlon Humphrey extension. I didn't and so that's the part that was so crazy to me. And like people are still following me, and I'm like, please, people don't follow me. I'm not.
Well, you can always send it over to us, and we'll be your buffer.
I will. Absolutely.
We'll be your buffer. And we'll just lay it out there. And look, if it falls flat on its face, it don't matter.
You can blame us. Yeah, we'll take the fall.
I got you.
No problem.
We're used to being made fun of by our fans and the comments. But yeah, so we'll just let it roll off the shoulder there. Sometimes I need some words of encouragement from my wife. But I mean, what else are they there for, than to encourage their spouse? So we can handle it. So you haven't heard any updates on how the visit went yet?
No, and that's like I said, I was going to follow up on it. I was just curious to know how it went. This is what I do know. The last time that, he was a free agent before he went to Indianapolis, they discussed it with coming to the Ravens. And apparently, I believe this was Ozzy's last year as the GM. This was before DeCosta took over. And from my understanding, he didn't care for the deal that was presented to him. He felt like he was worth more money. I think the problem, though, is like, the longer you're a free agent, the less you're probably going to receive. And the same thing that happened then is happening now. Now, I don't know if this changes anything, some years later, or if he's, going to stick to his guns and say, no, I feel like I am worth this kind of money. But from my understanding, he didn't really care for the deal that was given to him the last time, 3 years ago, I believe. And so that's why he didn't come to Baltimore and went to Indianapolis instead. But it'll be interesting to see how this goes. If I'll ask, and maybe I'll follow up and just tag some people. But I'm gonna mute that tweet. I'll tag you once I get the follow up. I'll tag you guys, and I'm gonna mute that tweet, and I'm gonna go about my day, and y'all can deal with the madness.
Right.
And Rita, do you think that the Ravens like to hang on to their comp picks as much as possible, and we know that if they do sign them before May 3rd, that they would look to lose one of their 4th round comp picks? Do you think this is a situation where they might ask Justin Houston to wait until that May 3rd date before he inks a deal in order to come here? Okay.
Yep, I definitely think that is if he likes the deal that was offered to him, if a deal was offered to him, I think that's what the Ravens do. They have a verbal agreement that's what's going to happen, but then they wait until, like you said, after the May 3rd date, so then they can still get that comp pick and then still get the guy that they want. I mean, obviously that's a risky thing because he still has the option to go to other teams, and somebody else can up the ante in that time. But yeah, I think that, I've seen people say it's just a 4th round, but I don't think the Ravens view it as such. I mean, look at how they utilize their free agents and, letting guys go like Michael Pierce and, Matthew Judon. They look at those guys like, okay, well, we're not going to pay those guys, so we want the pick for those guys. And that is how they continue to build through the draft. So even if you don't like it, unfortunately, that is the Ravens way.
Right.
So,
and we're with you 100% there, because we last night in our live show, we were having this debate with a lot of our viewers, and a lot of them were like, look, let go of the comp pick. And I think where Glenn and I kind of settled was like, in this case, based on the fact that we'll get 2 in total from Cully, and then obviously 2 in total between Ngakoue and Judon, it might be worth it if he applies the pressure, right? Like if Houston says, look, I got another deal on the table, let me know what your thoughts are, because I'm getting ready to sign. That could happen, but like you said, most likely, they're not going to want to lose that comp pick. I did see today that Irsay, and I think this is funny, the timing of all this, right? That Irsay came out and said that there's a possibility that Justin Houston will be back with the Indianapolis Colts. So I think that's interesting. Of course, I'm sure that agents are always doing a little bit of positioning and angling for their guy to get the most money possible.
Absolutely. And like you said, if you feel like it's slipping away, then like you already mentioned, they're already getting comp picks from other guys. So, is it worth the risk? Depends on how bad and I think that the Ravens badly need to bring in some veteran leadership at that position. So you would think that, if their backs are against the wall and they really like this guy, because both things have to be true, right? Then they just go ahead and pull the trigger, because, at this point, depending on how you view this, you could be saying that they're being a little greedy, because you already mentioned the other picks that they're getting. But I understand the logic to waiting if that is what's going on, right? Like, you want to play smart, not hard. I've always thought that. So if playing smart is signing them after the date and then still getting the comp pick, then, do what you got to do. The good thing about this is that it's free agency started a month ago and he's still a free agent. So, I mean, I can only imagine that the fanfare for him or teams, pursuing him might not be as many. So that possibly works in the Ravens' favor. But yeah, if it comes down to that and you really like him and you feel like he, fills a need that you have, then you just need to go ahead and pull the trigger.
Yeah. Now I want to follow up to that and ask about, we've talked about Justin Houston, but like you said, and Glenn and I both agree, we need to address the pass rushing, the pass rush department, edge defender department. I personally think, and I don't know, Glenn, how you feel about this one. I think that the chances of us doing so in free agency is higher than in the draft, based on where I think the board is going to fall. I think that the chances of us getting a guy or two in free agency is more likely specifically at edge than it is in the draft. Now, my question to you would be, there's a couple names that have been surrounding the Ravens as well. Apparently they're looking at bringing in other guys. They have their eyes on Melvin Ingram, Ryan Kerrigan. Is there a guy on that list as far as a fit for the Ravens that you see better than the other? And then as a follow-up to that, do you think that we'll bring in more than one? I feel like we might bring in two. So I'd like to know your thoughts on the fit of those guys, and then if you think more than one guy will be brought in.
You want to bring in more, right? Like, I think that just bringing in one doesn't do him any favors.
Right.
Do the team any favors. But correct me if I'm wrong. I love Melvin Ingram, by the way. I think he's a really good player. But my concern is I think he has a little bit of an injury history, and that's just based off the top of my head. I'm really just
No, you're right.
You're right. Yeah.
Going by that. So, do you want that kind of guy, and do you need a reinforcement if you bring in that kind of guy, right? You mentioned bringing in more than one guy. So as much as I like Melvin Ingram, like, well, what's the backup plan for if Melvin Ingram, didn't he just go down in 2020 last year? He had a knee injury.
I think he only played 3 games, right, Glenn?
Yeah, it wasn't many. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the guy coming back from a knee injury, he is about to be 32 years old, I believe, so not that he's old really in football age, but I'm sure the injuries kind of, age you a little bit. So I really think that Justin Houston would be a great fit for this team. But listen, if Houston decides to go back to Indy, then yes, you do have to look at your other options. Jadeveon Clowney is off the table now. He's with the Cleveland Browns. Ingram, like I said, you need to have some type of backup plan for that, because you have to calculate the fact that dude might not play 17 games, right? So Ryan Kerrigan, I'm gonna be honest, he went to the Titans, right? Is that what happened to him? Because I stopped following him when he left Washington, or did he?
Well, I think he's still a free agent right now, and they're thinking about bringing him in for a visit.
So Ryan Kerrigan is a guy that gets lost in the sauce because that defensive line is so good. Without him, essentially, with the guys that they have, that I just forgot that he even was still on the football team. That's a shame to say for me, because I think I'm referring to another guy from Washington that went to the Titans. But that just goes to show you they have so many good players up front, and that Ryan Kerrigan is, older. And probably more expensive than the other guys, because Chase Young is still a young player, and the other guys that they have is still young players. So, yeah, I think that would be a good fit. But yeah, you have to address it, like you said, in free agency. Yes, it would be great if you do this in draft. But like you said, the way that the draft table may fall, it's a very good chance that you don't get your guy in the first round. So you have to have a plan B and a plan C in order to do that. And for me, Houston is the best one out of the bunch currently. So we'll just see how it goes from there.
Yeah, it'd be certainly nice to know that a guy like Justin Houston, who doesn't miss games, who brings that instant veteran leadership and is a obvious scheme fit, that would be nice to see him come to Baltimore. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But outside of pass rush, we know the Ravens like to kind of seal up all their holes before the draft. That way they can aim at getting the best player available and not just going at positional need. With that being said, do you see any other positions the Ravens addressing in free agency before they go into that draft? That way they don't have to go for positional need and they can just address best player available.
It'll be interesting to see if they decide to address the offensive line situation. You still have a center situation that you should address. I don't know if they have just decided because, typically we draft linemen well, offensive linemen well, that we don't have to do that, right? And look, I know that they did address the right guard position, so I'm aware of that. But the center position is still one that I think is very shaky. Yeah. And that needs to be tweaked, even if it's a guy that it will be a backup for if you draft a guy or whatever. Are you comfortable with that position, with what you have? Are you moving Bozeman there? What are you doing there? Or do you want to bring in a guy to compete for that job and still, do your due diligence and getting an offensive lineman in the draft like you would usually do? So it'll be interesting. We know with the wide receiver situation, we know how that went. But, Sammy Watkins to me is a good player, another guy that can't stay healthy, but you needed some veteran leadership there. And, immediately Sammy Watkins is the best route runner on this football team by far. He has a relationship with Greg Roman, we know, from Buffalo. So there's a little bit of rapport there. And so I thought that this was the best fit. I wasn't a huge fan of bringing in Juju to this team because I knew that the bottom line would be he would want a certain amount of touches for a bigger deal. So I think that this Sammy move is a good one. And, no, he can't stay healthy. I think he was relatively healthy last year. And it's very possible that because, that team is very centered around Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, that, he just doesn't have to be on the field all the time, and they can rotate the other guys. But listen, you had to make a move there. You had to bring in a guy with some veteran leadership that can help these young boys, because all you have is young boys. Marquis Brown is going into his third year, and he's still trying to figure it all out. They're still trying to figure out what to do with Marquis Brown. And so and Willie Snead is now gone. So you had to make a move there. And I think that the move to get him was a good one for this team for now.
Now, one of the things I want to talk about the draft, but you brought it up, so I'm gonna take your segue and we're gonna roll with it. Get ready for the bombshell, because this is what a lot of the comments on the show are gonna be about. You talked about Sammy Watkins' familiarity with Greg Roman, right? And if anyone looks at, and I've been using this to strengthen my argument about Greg Roman, if anyone looked at Sammy Watkins' career, his best season was under Greg Roman. The only year he went over 1,000 yards, I think he had double-digit touchdowns. If not, he had 9 at a minimum. I think it was 9 or 10 that he had that year. Best statistical year of his career was with Greg Roman in Buffalo. Now, a lot of fans will look at the fact that we were last in some statistics in as far as the passing game goes, but overall production, I don't think we're the worst team out there. So my question to you is as follows: where are you on Greg Roman as an offensive coordinator? It seems like people are either on one side or the other. They love him or they hate him. So where do you stand as with Greg Roman as a coordinator, and then also in the passing game?
I think that Greg Roman is like many people in his position, where they are who they are, and change is not a thing for guys like him, right? And I say that because history says he's run similar offenses with San Francisco as well as Buffalo, where they were very, run heavy offenses. And I think many times ego gets in the way. And so I like Greg Roman. I don't love him, but I like his running schemes. To me, are unmatched. They are very good, very good. The problem is not just with passing schemes, and this is not all Greg Roman, right? But the guys that they have and working on what they could do to be better players. So for instance, I think that Miles Boykin could be a good player, but Miles Boykin has to do some work. And, now they've gotten T. Martin and I think Keith Williamson to help with that. And I hope that makes some changes. But I mean, Miles Boykin got some bad feet, baby. And he doesn't help. He doesn't help with the scheme, the wide receiver scheme that we already feel like could use some work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I would like to see Greg Roman to do is allow these young guys to get a little bit more involved and allow them to present some schemes that could potentially help these teams. Marquis Brown, I don't know how much he weighs, but if I had to guess, he's like 170 pounds wet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why is he on the outside? Now, we know why he was on the outside before, because Willie Snead is a really good guy in the slot. But he is not Hollywood Brown. Put that guy where he can flourish the best. And that would be the slot. Yes, I know he was a first round draft pick, but do you want him to be a first round draft pick and try to treat him as such, or do you want him to be put in the best situation for him as well as the football team? And I think
Lamar Jackson, right? Like
Lamar.
Yep.
And Lamar. Put that guy in the slot more. And like I said, get these guys to work on their footing, because that's been some issues in getting separation in the offseason, which is not all that obviously is not a Greg Roman thing, right? That's an individual thing that you got to work on. And you need coaches that can help you get to that next level. So again, I don't hate G-Bro. I don't love him. But I also realize that in order to be in this business, the league evolves regularly. And you have to find a way to do the same thing to keep your toes off of your feet. I'm not asking the Ravens to be a passing offense. I don't think that that's who they are, right? But I think that when you are dead last in passing, I think when you do start to play better teams, obviously in the playoffs, that comes into play. And that's something that just be 25th. Like let 7 teams be worse than you, right? But at least 7 teams is worse than you, right? Like I ain't even asking for them to be like in the top 16. I'm not, because that's not who they are. But I do think that they have to allow Lamar to develop and grow. And what we're seeing is, it's time. This was his 3rd season. It's time to let him open it up a little bit more. And that's all. That's really what it boils down to.
So let me follow up with this real quick, if you'll bear with me on this question. So before you hopped on, Glenn and I were having an off-air conversation about the NBA. So I'll make a comparison here. Zion Williamson is something that we've never seen before. I mean, he will be the first one in NBA history to average 26 points a game at over 64%. Shooting percentage from the field, which is just incredible based on his volume and the high percentage. But he needs to work on his outside shooting, because like you said, in the playoffs, you play better teams, they're going to slough off and they're going to clog the lane. Now, I'll give you an example. Ben Simmons is unwilling to shoot the basketball. He just won't do it. Where Zion seems to show a willingness to at least try it. And I think that's the key, at least the first step. So I want to make that comparison to the Ravens. Do you think that Greg Roman, you talked about change, do you think that he's too rigid to where he's not able to work with a guy like T. Martin and Keith Williams to improve the quality of his passing scheme? Or do you think that there is a willingness there for him to at least say, all right, John brought these guys in. I can see the writing on the wall. If I don't, improve a bit, look, the guy taking my job is already here if I don't improve. So do you think that he's willing enough to at least accept the idea of changing enough to where he improves the passing attack to, like you said, be 25th, be 23rd, you know what I mean? Be top 20. Like, do you think
20 something?
Right. Do you think he's willing enough at least to do that? Or do you think he's just too rigid in his ways and it's just, it's not going to change?
I don't know, but I really hope so. See, I just have a thing that coaches, no matter who the coach is, are just set in their ways, with the exception of guys like Nick Sabans and Bill Belichick's of the world, right? Like they evolve constantly, because that's what people do, right? Like, and evolution ain't hard. We all evolve. And so they just implemented it into a football game plan while everybody else remains stagnant, because, this worked, so why should I change? You know what I mean? And I don't think that this is a Greg Roman specific thing. I think this is a coach specific thing. Like, coaches say, well, my track record says that this is successful, so I don't understand why y'all feel like I need to make changes. And the answer to that should always be, well, did you win the Super Bowl?
Right.
That should be the answer. If your if your coaching didn't win you a championship, I don't care if it's minor tweaks. I don't care. It doesn't have to be an overhaul. And that's the thing that I wonder, like, do people think that they have to just completely make changes to everything? Because I don't think that that's what people are asking for. I think that people just want to see wide receivers not running down the same lanes in, multiple times in a season, right? Like little things like that. Like, I don't think that people are asking for a lot. They just want to see things tweaked here and there.
You must talk to more reasonable people than us. Because there's a lot of you out there that just want them to throw out the baby with the bathwater and move on, man. It's crazy.
Can I be honest with y'all for a second? My fandom is very strong. And obviously when you guys know, right, when you start doing it, when you're on the other side of it and you do podcasts and some journalistic things, you get a little bit more balance, right, in terms of how you view things. And that's helped me a ton have perspective. Yeah. And so I don't get, I tell everybody all the time, like the last time I cried over a football game was the 2011 AFC Championship game. I cried for 3 days. And on the third day, I was just like, what am I crying about? Like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. And it just all changed for me that day, right? Like, things happen. Sometimes mistakes are being made. And what you have to do is watch the film and don't make the same mistakes again. And what did the Ravens do the following year? They watched the film. They didn't make the same mistakes again. They end up winning the Super Bowl, right? So that's all I'm asking for. The story behind the Super Bowl was they go into halftime of the AFC Championship game in 2012. And Jim Caldwell, right? He's the offensive coordinator. Basically was like, I'm just gonna like take all the wheels off, the training wheels off. I'm just gonna let y'all do what y'all do. Like, and that's literally what happened. And then in the second half, like Anquan Bolden just comes out and boom, bam, bam, like he's unstoppable. They just let them do whatever that they wanted to do. I mean, of course they had a game plan. I'm not saying it was street ball.
They were loose.
Right. They told them to get loose. Stop worrying about the script. If you see a guy that's open, then just throw it to that guy. Don't worry about nothing else. And from that point on, it took them to the Super Bowl. That's, to me, even though that wasn't really something that Jim Caldwell did like specifically, but him allowing his players to play is an evolution.
Yeah, just that change in mindset, right?
Exactly. Right, so that's what you want in your coaches, whether it be your head coach, your offensive, defensive coordinators, it doesn't matter. You want them to get the feel of the game and say, okay, we're doing this and this isn't really going how I would like because I feel like it's getting too close. I just kind of want y'all to just do your thing. And when you let guys do their thing and they know what's on the line, they're going to step up and they're going to play. And that's just really what I want. Now, we know with the Ravens in the Buffalo game, they didn't have a chance. And it just is what it is, right? The offensive line really just did not do a good job. So doing what you do just wasn't going to work. And it happens, right? It just wasn't their day. But what you want from that is understanding what the defense did to you, watching the film. And when that opportunity comes again, because don't you know everybody's going to watch that Buffalo highlight and say, okay, this is what we did to be successful. That team was in the middle of the pack on defense. And yet they looked like a number one defense out there that night. All you have to do is watch what they did and figure out how you can evolve from the mistakes that you made in that playoff game. And that's really all we want. That's all we're asking for.
Fingers crossed.
And I think the Ravens have they made it clear that they see that was an issue. They addressed it by bringing in Keith Williams and T. Martin. So at this point, I'm going to choose to be optimistic because they've identified it as a problem. Yep. And seemingly by the hires, that they've made, they're working towards the solution to that problem. So hopefully next year, if faced with the same situation, they have an answer for it. No doubt about it. But I guess we got to wait and see for that. Now, of course, talking about the draft again. How would you right now? I mean, I know things can change if Justin Houston signed or if Orlando Brown Jr. is eventually moved, which I got to get your opinion on that after this question. But so things can still change from here to now. But as it stands right now, as the team is currently constructed, what do you view as the three areas of need? And if you could rank them as 1, 2, 3 heading into the draft.
You need a pass rusher, number one. That's my biggest
Yep.
Biggest thing. Number 2, I am a trenches person. So you still need to bolster your offensive line. Number 2. And then you need a change gaming skill player at number 3, right? Like those to me are the 3 things that I think.
That sounded like my list of priorities, Jimbo.
Yeah.
Me and Reed are on the same page.
those are the ones like you let Judon go, and Ngakwe. What do you? These other guys, we've seen them play. And the one guy named Sack Daddy, I ain't seen him sack a whole lot of people.
I call him Snack Daddy.
Maybe he needs to call himself Snack Daddy, right?
Yeah.
Like you give yourself a name like that, bro, you better come out here and you better be sacking people left and right. I mean, we know he's had a sack before, but I want to see you doing what your Twitter page tells us that you are, right? Like be that guy. Yep. So, they have to find a way, because again, if you lose the upfront battle, you lose the battle. And yes, your secondary is good. Everybody knows that secondary is really good. But why would you want to put that kind of pressure on that secondary if you can't rush the quarterback? So that's why it's so important to me. And then again, every playoff time it comes around, it feels like Lamar is not being protected. So maybe some of it is scheme, maybe some of it is personnel. And I think that this year, personnel was a bigger issue, right? Like losing Marshall Yonda is something that you knew was going to have an effect. Nobody thought that they was just going to be just fine without him. But I think you see how bad things can be without an all-pro guy at right guard, and how important he was. And he made people better at his position as well, the guys around him. So you have to find some more stability on the offensive line. You got to give these guys time to get open, because you want to protect Lamar. I don't want him to always feel like he needs to run out of the pocket when things are breaking down. But then again, you need a guy that's going to step up and be his blanket. And I'm not talking about Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is the blanket, and I'm completely fine with that. But you need a wide receiver that can do that as well, because Mark Andrews, everybody's going to double and triple team. I can't speak today. Triple team him. So that's, we know in the playoffs they're going to phase him out. So then who else is going to step up? And the guys currently on the roster they haven't found the solution to that yet. So you need a guy that really is going to make a difference because of their size, because of their speed. And so that's why I think that those 3 are the most important coming out of this draft.
Yeah, maybe we can get playoff Sammy, as they called him down in Kansas City, to show up for us. We got to keep him on the field till that point, so hopefully they can get it done. But quickly, I just wanted to ask, what do you think ultimately happens with Orlando Brown Jr.? Because initially when he put out the tweets and all the reports, I said, typically the Ravens honor wishes like this, and they're likely going to move on. But we know that they're asking for a certain number, a pick or whatever their asking price is. And if it's not met, I could also see them going to Orlando and saying, look, we understand that's your dream. We ask you to play out the final year of your contract. You can go chase that dream and possibly become the next highest paid left tackle next offseason. We'll get a comp pick out of it, likely a 3rd round if he does sign that monster deal. So you got to at least come with a 1st rounder, I'm assuming, to get Orlando Brown Jr. But how do you ultimately see the situation playing itself out?
So, draft day is a good day for things like this to happen, right? I'm not completely saying that there's a 0 chance. I just think that the longer the days go, the lesser of the chance that it happens. But we've seen players get traded for draft picks all the time. On draft days. So it's not unlikely that this could happen. But I'm concerned. I wonder if the Ravens are reluctant to do this, because do they know if their left tackle and Ronnie Stanley is completely healthy? And do they want to make that kind of move? And that guy is not 100%. And so, like you said, it's very possible that they went to him and said, listen, we're kind of in a rut. And it really is, he can sit out if he wants to. I don't think that that's what he wants to do, because, I just don't see that happening. Yeah. But, them saying, look, we're going to honor you next year. We'll probably tag you and then trade you to a team of your choice or whatever. But this guy, and this is just me hypothetically speaking, I'm not insider speaking or anything. This guy is just not 100%. And we're concerned that, we won't be able to protect Lamar the way we would like. And obviously we know what it is that you can do. And in this situation, this could potentially raise your stock value even more, your trade value even more, if you continue to play left tackle for the Baltimore Ravens. But I do think that at some point, unless some weird thing happens and they cut Stanley, which I don't see, right, that, he becomes a left tackle somewhere else. I think after draft day, it's pretty much written in stone that this is probably going to be his last season in Baltimore. And then, they'll move on. But it will be really interesting to see if he starts at left tackle week 1, if Stanley is 100%.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting. And I agree with that point as well. I really wasn't thinking about that a ton until John mentioned, he was asked about in his press conference, he was asked about the health of Stanley. And he said, well, you guys know if Stanley's not ready to go, we got another left tackle. And he kind of said it like,
exactly.
It's pretty tongue in cheek there. But it's like you said, it brings up a great point. And we've also seen that Eric DaCosta has not been unwilling to pull the trigger as far as in-season trades go. Maybe a team gets a little desperate, a left tackle goes down, something like that. Stanley starts to get healthy and ramp up, and then they feel good about moving on from him. So,
or maybe they might be looking at Cleveland going, Myles Garrett's one thing, but now you got Jadeveon Clowney on the other side. Man, if those both are healthy, you need 2 tackles. Sorry, Orlando, you're going to have to play right tackle one last year here in Baltimore before you go live out your dream.
Yeah, I don't think Brady Christensen, who I mocked us.
I don't think he's ready for Jadeveon yet. Not Jadeveon. That's a different kind of man right there.
Yeah, maybe Trevor Jenkins. No.
Tevin Jenkins. Maybe he's ready, but that's about it.
We appreciate your time on the show tonight, Rita. We know that everyone's busy and has a lot going on, so we appreciate you taking the time to set out your evening tonight to be here with us. Why don't you let folks know where they can follow you, where they can catch you? I mentioned what you're doing, but any plugs you wanna shout out, please feel free to do so.
First of all, thank you guys very much for having me. It was a pleasure. And you can find me, of course, on Twitter at the NFL Chick. And the podcast does have a Twitter page at Gridiron Gals, GALS. That is myself, as well as my best friend, Shells, the Cowboys fan. So it's always fun to have those types of conversations about football. But we don't get into it too often for, obvious reasons, right? And then Project Game Day with Glenn Clark on Pressbox online. Usually it is on Facebook Live. And then we do the replay on the Pressbox online website.
Nice. All right, Rita. Well, we really appreciate you coming on with us. Hope you feel better, and we can get you maybe on camera next time we have you on.
Next time I'll be dolled up. I won't be under the covers like I am now. I'll have it on for y'all. I promise.
All right, sounds great. We appreciate it. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks, Rita.
Bye.